We're going to turn to trade right now. It's a great pleasure to bring in U.S. Trade Representative, my friend Jamieson Greer, who is doing yeoman's work in a very, very difficult area. Jamieson, thank you ever so much for coming on. Really just a bunch of questions and reflections on your part. A potential, some kind of China-Canadian deal. Let's start with that. Is China trying to get, sell cheap cars into Canada, which will then come underneath USMCA and infiltrate in the U.S.? Is that what they're trying to do? Or how do you read this China-Canadian deal?
Well, China certainly has a plan to send their cheap cars all over the world. They've been executing it for a long time. Now they have a plan to send some into Canada. Right now it's about 50,000 units. It's a hard quota. Canada consumes about 1.8 million a year, so it's not a ton, but it's the camel's nose under the tent. What I will say is the U.S. trade policy will prevent those coming in without having a hefty tariff on top of them if they're Chinese origin. So we're protected here from that.
Yeah, the president said he might slap a 100% tariff on those kinds of goods. China, by the way, ruined Europe. I would think the Europeans would have learned something. Maybe not. We'll get to that in a minute. You know, with their cheap electric cars, they absolutely destroyed the automobile industry in Europe. They'll destroy the automobile industry in Canada, but you're not going to let them destroy it in the United States.
That's exactly right. And you might remember, Larry, when we did the USMCA deal in the first term, we baked into that a provision that allowed the U.S. to essentially kick Canada out of the deal if they make a comprehensive trade deal with China. This trade that Canada's made, which is some cars so that Canada can export some canola oil to China, it's a discrete, limited trade deal. But the president is right to lay the marker down and say, if you do a comprehensive trade deal like USMCA with China, then we won't have a trade deal with you.
Yeah, I got it. Let's move over. India and the European Union putting together a trade deal. I don't know what details are known or unknown. I don't believe you or anyone has yet weighed in on this publicly. I haven't heard from the president. Do you have any impressions of that deal?
I do. First of all, strategically, it's important to understand that because President Trump has prioritized domestic production and essentially started charging a fee for other countries to access our market, these countries are trying to find other outlets for their overproduction. And so the EU is turning to India to try to find a place. The EU is so trade dependent, they need other outlets if they can't keep sending all their stuff to the United States. I've looked at some of the details of the deal so far. I think India comes out on top on this, frankly. They get more market access into Europe. It sounds like they have some additional immigration rights. I don't know for sure, but President von der Leyen of the EU has talked about mobility for Indian workers into Europe. So I think on net, India is going to have a heyday with this. They have low-cost labor. And it looks like the EU is doubling down on globalization when we're trying to fix some of the problems of globalization here in the U.S.
It's like they learned nothing from Davos. We still have a 25% tariff on India with respect to purchasing Russian oil, don't we?
We do. That's on top of the 25% reciprocal tariff. So yes.
And how is India done on that? Do we have a report card? Are they still buying Russian oil, or are they cooperating, or what?
They have made a lot of progress on this. I'm in frequent contact with my counterpart in India. I have a great working relationship with him, but they still have a ways to go on this point. They like the discount that you get from Russian oil. It's close by, so it's hard for them. The Treasury Department has put into place, a few weeks ago now, more significant sanctions, so we expect India to continue to wind that down, but we're watching it closely.
Jamieson, is there any updates on the EU-US trade deal? It was originally, the idea is, correct me if I'm wrong, 15% tariff. They were going to invest some $500 or $600 billion over a period of years. At various times, it sounded like it was complete, but then not complete. Can you update us on that US-EU deal?
Sure, happy to do that. So as you'll recall, last summer, We agreed to the framework. It included the $600 billion in investment, the $750 billion in energy purchases, and their reduction of their tariffs on industrial goods to zero, and more market access for U.S. agricultural products in Europe. They agreed to all that. They have had a bill to lower their tariffs going through the European Parliament. That has not passed yet. During the last week's discussions around Greenland, the European Parliament said they would put that on pause. We told them, of course, you shouldn't wrap up, national security with the trade deal. You should focus on implementing the trade deal, and we can work out the other thing. And so that's actually back on track, I would say. The Greenland talks are going forward in their silo, and the trade deal talks are going forward in their silo with positive language from European leaders on the prospects of passing that bill soon.
So you're optimistic on that deal. That's good. I haven't really heard anybody comment on it in a while. I almost forgot about it, but I can't forget about it.
Well, it doesn't solve every problem between the United States and America. We still have issues with digital services taxes with certain member states, or pharmaceutical pricing practices with certain member states. So there may be still areas of dispute, but for that trade deal, the United States has modified its tariffs for Europe. It's given them a good deal, and we're looking forward to Europe finally passing their half of it.
And one more, the president was quite miffed at South Korea. He said they haven't followed through on their trade deal. He slapped an additional tariff on them. Can you give us an update there? Are you in touch with South Korea? What's doing?
We are. You can imagine that after the message went out, the Koreans swiftly contacted me and contacted others. Again, last summer, we reached a framework agreement with Korea. We implemented our portion where we modified our tariff rates. They were at 25%. We moved down to 15% for Korea as a show of good faith. They have not executed their part. They haven't implemented it. They have a commitment to invest $350 billion in the United States over the next 3 years. And they also have a commitment to allow more U.S. cars into Korea, to eliminate some of their non-tariff barriers on agriculture, to treat our digital companies fairly. But in the meantime, they haven't been able to get a bill through to do the investment. They've introduced new laws on digital services. They haven't done what they needed to do on agriculture and industry, and so it's hard to continue to hold up our end of the bargain while they have not moved forward swiftly enough on their end.
And since the president slapped that tariff on, have they said anything new? I mean, it sounds like the legislature, maybe it's the executive branch. I don't know what they're waiting for. You're either in or you're not in. I mean, there was a buy down, as you say, $350 billion, keep it at 15%. They're blowing that out of the water, and it doesn't seem to be any progress.
Well, I think that they are getting the message. Again, I had conversations with them early this morning, actually. They have their trade officials coming into town later this week, so we'll hear from them. I'm happy to have meetings. We're happy to talk to them. We have nothing in particular against Korea. They're an ally. But when it comes to the economics of all of this, it has to be balanced. In 2020, we had a $25 billion trade deficit with Korea. Over the 4 years of Biden's presidency, it blew up to $65 billion. It's not sustainable, and it has to change.
Last one, Jamieson, it's not exactly your area, but do you think that, is there any evidence that you can find from a trade standpoint that places like China, not our best friend, or India, sometimes our friend, sometimes not, are actually in the marketplace selling dollars, because they're running large trade deficits and they're selling dollars on the exchanges, trying to weaken our dollar, or that they're trying to get unfair advantages with their currencies? Do you find any of that stuff in your travels?
Well, I certainly am skeptical of other countries' currency practices. We know that the PBOC, the Chinese Central Bank, they control where that currency is pretty clearly. We understand that, and we know that countries, they like to weaken their currency so that they can be more export competitive vis-a-vis the United States. Remember, these countries are so much more trade dependent than the United States, and so sometimes they will weaken their currencies deliberately to try to be more competitive in our market.
Yeah, I think some of that's going on right now, to be honest with you. Anyway, U.S. Trade Rep Jamieson Greer, thanks for the update. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Larry. Good to see you.
All right, thank you.